Lights in here. Much better. Love it. Thank you. Perfect. If you could just stay there so I can get the focus.
Wait, this is your.
Yeah, I'm
Whenever you're ready.
okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
A little louder.
Good morning.
And thank you for all being here.
Sorry, we're having audio issues.
You start again.
A little audio issue.
I'm used to it.
Do you want to do a test? Audio test.
I think we're good now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for all being here. My name is Anthony Feliciano. I'm Vice President for our advocacy efforts at Housing Works. Today, members of New York's HIV and LGBTQ Community Plus are raising a unified and urgent call to Governor Hochul and the New York State Legislature. New York must enact a final budget that meaningfully confronts escalating federal attacks, threatening decades of progress in HIV prevention, care, housing, and health equity. We appreciate the governor's affirmation in her state of a simple but powerful belief that government should make life more affordable, keep people safe, and expand opportunity, not shrink it. We are here today because those values must be reflected clearly and decisively in the final enacted state budget. In December, more than 500 members of our communities delivered a petition to the governor calling for concrete actions to demonstrate New York's growing commitment to ending the HIV epidemic. They call for sustained funding for proven HIV programs, housing assistance for people with HIV experiencing homelessness, and real investments to ensure equitable access to HIV prevention tools, including PrEP. Those requests came from people on the front lines, and yet critical elements were once again left out of the executive budget. We're grateful that the 2027 fiscal year executive budget sustains level funding for core ending the epidemic and the AIDS Institute programs. And we thank the AIDS Institute for being a partner and the AIDS Advisory Council for being a partner to sustain that. That continued investment helped New York bend the curve of the epidemic in 2019, when the first time after decades of increases, the number of New Yorkers living with HIV finally began to decline. We should applaud that. But sustaining funding alone is no longer enough, because New York is losing ground. The data is clear and deeply concerning. New HIV diagnoses have increased for the third year in a row, reversing hard-won progress made prior to 2020, particularly outside of New York City. And these increases are not evenly distributed. Black New Yorkers are experiencing new HIV diagnoses at more than 9 times the rate of white New Yorkers. Latino, Latinx New Yorkers at more than 5 times the rate. These disparities are unacceptable, especially when we have tools to prevent HIV. Despite representing more than 3/4 of new HIV diagnoses statewide, Black and Latino New Yorkers account for just 22% of PrEP prescriptions in New York State. This is not a failure of science or medicine, it's a failure of access, of investment and equity. We now have powerful HIV prevention tools, including a one-a-day pill, long-acting injectable PrEP, administered every 2 months, and newly approved ultra-long-acting options, requiring just 2 injections a year. But innovation does not equal impact unless New Yorkers invest in education, navigation, and culturally responsive care, so those tools reach the communities that need them the most. These disparities are not inevitable, and they are not acceptable. They are a direct result of policy choices, and that is why the final state budget must include targeted investments of HIV housing stability and PrEP equity if New Yorkers are serious about ending the epidemic in every community. Specifically, we are calling on the governor and the legislature to take 2 essential actions in the final enacted budget. First, give every community in New York State, not just New York City, the option to provide rental subsidies to public assistance eligible people with HIV, experiencing homelessness or housing instability. Second, invest in strategies to invest equitable access and uptake of all PrEP modalities statewide. We have other important priorities, and we have a longer set of comprehensive tools and things that we want funded. The other areas is invest $10 million in New York's peer workforce and employment supports. Advance PrEP equity with $6 million investment, as I noted before, and support older New Yorkers living with HIV with $10 million investment. We should be proud that people are living longer with HIV, but that does not mean we stop there. As you get older, we know that things come up with your health and well-being, and so particularly when you're experiencing with HIV. So these are our top 5 priorities, with a slew of other important things that we want to do. And we do this in conjunction with many coalitions. And we do it in conjunction with the End the Epidemic Community Coalition. Today, you'll hear more details about these priorities and why we're here today, to meet with legislators and to fight hard for these programs and services, continually as we see threats from the federal government. So I want to invite Shirley Torrio, the National Black Leadership Commission on Health.
So, as usual, we echo similar sentiments, and so, you'll hear a couple of representations this morning. My name is Shirley Torrio, and I'm the President and CEO of the National Black Leadership Commission on Health. And, as Anthony has said, HIV disproportionately impacts Black and Brown communities in New York State due to systemic inequities. Despite a 42% decrease in statewide diagnoses between 2011 and 2022, Black and Hispanic New Yorkers face significantly higher rates of infection, lower viral suppression, and greater barriers to care, including housing instability and lack of insurance. In New York City, rates of HIV diagnoses in 2024 among Black and Latino New Yorkers were at 9.2 and 5.4 times higher than the rate for white New Yorkers. New HIV diagnoses, as you've heard, also increased for the 3rd year in a row. Community organizations like ours continue to partner with the New York State Department of Health's AIDS Institute to offer programming that deeply reflects our commitment to achieving health equity for all, regardless of skin color or HIV status, and services that are responsive to the lived experiences, trauma, and stigma that disproportionately affect Black, Indigenous, and people of color. As has been said, we are grateful that the FY27 executive budget sustains level funding for core Ending the Epidemic and New York State Department of Health AIDS Institute programs and services that have driven progress towards our historic Ending the Epidemic goals. However, We simply cannot continue to sit back and cannot address the stark disparities in HIV outcomes and meet our ending the epidemic goals without addressing housing and PrEP inequity. When legislators fund prevention, testing, treatment, and community-based care, they save lives, strengthen public health systems, and reduce long-term healthcare costs. We have the tools to end the HIV epidemic. What we need now is the political will to do so. Thank you all.
You heard before of the federal threats we've had on our efforts to end the epidemic. I want to bring Lindell Urbano, who represents AmeriCare.
That's my insurance. AmeriCare.
Hi, my name is Lindell Urbano. I'm the Senior Director of Public Policy and Government Relations at AmeriCare. For a little background, AmeriCare is one of New York's 3 HIV special needs plans. It was set up by the AIDS Institute and the community to make sure that people living with HIV had access to care and services within the Medicaid program. We're at an interesting point in our efforts to end the HIV epidemic. We have all the medications, we have all the tools that we need to end it, but we have a problem. The problem is that the people who need those tools and those medications don't always have access to them. Part of the problem right now is that we can't rely on the federal government. We have several programs that we depend on to keep our efforts together. One of them is Medicaid. We also have the Ryan White program and other services that depend heavily on federal support. Most of those programs are either under threat, either because of direct cuts, as in the case of H.R. 1 to the Medicaid program, or because of federal instability. We saw an example of that just 2 weeks ago, where behavioral health funding was defunded and then refunded overnight. So that's why we're here in New York, though. Like, we're in New York. New York State has shown itself to be a partner, and we need New York more than ever. We need New York to step up when the federal government steps back. Our agenda here, our plan really is a roadmap to doing that. It lays out tools that we can implement to make sure that people have access to the care that they need, because that's the main barrier. Right? We talk about New York needs to fully fund Medicaid. New York needs to make sure that people who are living with HIV, especially those who don't live in New York City, have access to housing. Where I live up in central New York, to get to a doctor who feels comfortable treating HIV, I travel 3 hours. That's unacceptable. You know, we need to do better. A lot of the services, the roadmap really helps get us to a place where we're doing better and we can actually end the epidemic.
Thank you.
One of our other partners is the Alliance for Positive Change, and I want to bring up Luis Worrell.
Hello, Luis.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Luis Worrell, and I'm from the Alliance for Positive Change. We actually have 5 agencies in the New York State area. We have a housing unit, Pelham Grand, and we also do needle exchange at our Lower East Side. I'm going to speak about some of the priorities that we are asking for our governor to take a look into. During this time of the federal attacks on Medicaid funding, cuts in programs essential to achieving the end of the epidemic and other federal actions targeting the community still disappropriately impacted by the epidemic, it is critical to continue the federal year ending 26 ETE funding levels in the federal year ending 2027 and restore the federal year ending 25 legislative acts to CPS and MSA that were eliminated from the federal year 26 budget and baseline to those legislative acts. We also are seeking for investment into the peer workforce and employment opportunities, which is at least $10 million, ending the epidemic through employment its cost-serving, high-impact strategy to increase healthcare access to support and safety net intensity, the impact of under-resourced organizations provide life-changing economic and mobility opportunities for people living with HIV. Investing in New York's peer workers is more essential than ever as our communities face mandatory community engagement requirements and other unprecedented barriers in assessing the healthcare benefits of HIV prevention, treatment, and other supportive services. I was also a peer. I started out at the agency in 2011, and right now I'm actually I can't even remember what it is. The outreach project manager. So what I'm saying is that the peer workforce does help us, and if we eliminate these services, we won't be able to have peer programs, which also helps in the community and service throughout the tri-state area. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker, we're going to end up acknowledging some of our supporters. We want to be clear. There is strong growing support for these actions across the state. And we have them with our legislature, not only with our coalition partners, but I truly believe that this governor can stand up for those living with HIV, and we're counting on her on this. Right now, we have sustained funding, but we believe she can take the next step. I want to bring in our new state organizer here for Housing Works, Will Rivera, who will say a few words from one of our key elected officials.
That's Will.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good. I'm Will Rivera, New York State Housing Works, New York State Community Organizer. And so I wanted to take a moment to thank Senator Gustavo Rivera as he has shared some words that he asked us to share on his behalf. Senator Rivera is also the Senate Health Committee Chair. And so Senator Rivera has said, I urge the legislator and the executive to work together to allocate the funding necessary to help our state advance the goals set by the end